Hi, this is Bagyashree, and you may know me from the film Millets, which was a blockbuster Hindi movie back in the 90s. But post that, of course, I've done a lot of films, but apart from that, I'm also a nutritionist. I've done plenty of courses from the Stanford University, from the University of Pennsylvania, and also from the American Professionals and Fitness Associates. And today, me with Nate, we are going to talk about something really interesting, and that's about millets. Millets are an alternative to wheat. They are gluten-free and something that all of us should include in our diet.
Bagyashree, it's a pleasure to be here with you. And again, thank you so much for the great work that you're doing, not in Bollywood, but as an advocate for sorghum and millets. These grains, as you mentioned, they're some of the oldest grains that mankind has ever produced. They're really, really healthy, and they're really, really sustainable. And that's why at Sorghum United, we really are promoting regional food systems and food security through these grains. And it's so nice to have an advocate such as yourself. So thank you so much.
Well, if you must know that India is one of the largest producers of sorghum also. Unfortunately, as all governments do, they promote what can be fed to the masses and what is easily accessible, easily possible to distribute, and especially in a developing country, you need to have more mouths that need to be fed easily and something that's even economically viable. And that's how rice and wheat was something that governments propagated much more than millets, though millets are definitely more nutritious.
Right. And I always like to say that we love rice and wheat and corn and soya. There's room on the plate for everyone. Now, we advocate specifically for these grains because people just really haven't. People haven't been aware of these grains and why they're so important. Really, for about, 100 years or so. So just like you, on a global scale, we're trying to bring these grains back to the forefront for the consumers, not only for the health benefits, but again, being drought resistant and bringing hardy grains and being very, very water conserving crops.
They are climate resilient.
Right.
So that makes them not only very economically viable if they are grown in large quantities, but also very sustainable. It's a crop that can be grown at the most arid regions of the world. In fact, they are grown in places where they're rocky areas, where there isn't much of fertile soil, there isn't much of irrigation, and yes, sorghum does grow there too.
Yeah, and I've been to so many parts of the world where they can't grow their own food anymore because they're relying on crops that aren't as resilient. And so these grains play such a pivotal role in that food security.
See, India has been always propaganding to have more millets, and we back home do end up having a lot of millets, and it's just not sorghum. We have foxtail millet, we have bajra, najni, ragi, kodo, which is like pearl millet, foxtail millet, barnyard millet. We have all these millets which do come across in our Indian food and culture. But somehow, the Americans are so fond of corn. Now you have to tell us, why are they not? It's not just wheat, but they do not wish to, move off corn, which is, I think, so difficult to digest.
Well, and it's funny because actually I live in Nebraska, and that's where Sorghum United is based, which, by the way, we also work in millets, sorghum and millets, but had to keep the name a little shorter. But Nebraska is actually known as the Cornhusker State. So it's so funny you say this. I don't think this is just an American thing, though. I think just like millets went away after the colonial period, I think corn came in with the colonial period as well. And so when we look at the global food systems, which really only prioritize maybe 5 different grains, right? Part of the problem is that the system has really grown around those grains, and it's difficult to interject different alternative grains into that system. So I don't think it's just an American thing. I think it's a European thing as well. But I think it's also our large food manufacturing companies because they know these other grains. They don't know sorghum and millets.
Mm-hmm.
And the consumers, quite frankly, also don't know sorghum and millets. And so in a wonderful capitalist society, we can't have growth if there's not the consumer demand, right? And consumers can't demand a product if they don't know it exists.
Yes, so awareness is the key.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, people don't know that millets, along with having proteins and iron and vitamin B, they also have a lot of micronutrients that are required for our body. And somehow, these millets, different kind of millets together, form the main protein systems that we all require. Like if you're a vegetarian, you can't do with having just one kind of cereal. You can't have just wheat. It's not going to give you protein enough. But to have the different 9 varieties of the amino acids, you require all these different type of millets that you can change and have the possibility of getting a diverse gut microbiome, which is something that we all require to maintain gut health. So I think the utility of these millets is something that the public needs to be aware of, and it's really very simple. Like most people don't know that if you soak pulses and you soak these millets for a couple of hours before you cook them, it's easier on the stomach, it's easier to digest. A lot more may be able to make different products like biscuits or breads or even chapatis, and various things can be made if they are just soaked for a couple of hours. It just becomes so much more easier to utilize.
So it's not just a question of getting consumers to be aware that these grains exist,
Mm-hmm.
but also how to use them.
Absolutely.
Right? And one thing that is commonly asked of me is, well, how do I cook sorghum and millets?
Mm-hmm.
Or what do I use sorghum millets for?
Right.
And the reality is, it doesn't have to be difficult. When at home, when we cook millets, we use them just the same way we would rice, right? Or in a flour, we use them just the same way we would with wheat flour,
Absolutely.
right? A few minor changes, but it doesn't have to be difficult. You mentioned the gut microbiome, by the way. I'm really excited because this is an exciting time in the millets industry.
Mm-hmm.
In the last few years, there have been over 200 different independently verified research studies that have been published around the world that show that millets help rebalance the human gut microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
There's anti-carcinogenic benefits,
Mm-hmm.
heart health benefits, diabetes management benefits,
Absolutely.
and anti-inflammatory benefits for sorghum, just to name a few.
Also because they have so much of fiber, and both kinds of fiber, soluble as well as insoluble. Also, back here in India, we talk about the Ayurvedic benefits. So it's also some products create more alkalinity in your body, and some products are more acidic. So sorghum, for example, is something that can create alkalinity in your body, which helps in your digestion. And there goes the acid reflux.
That's right. Food is medicine. And this is something we absolutely need to be thinking more about.
Mm-hmm.
So Sorghum United, just for your information, a lot of what we do is connecting all points in the value chain for the free exchange of ideas, regardless of geography or geopolitical climates, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that we do is that markets development piece. And so our efforts at that are these Sorghum Squad books.
Okay.
They're comic book style adventures, but they're fun, but they're also educational. And we get tremendous reviews from the educational sector, from schools, from teachers, but also just kids like them. They're fun. It's a globe-trotting adventure to rediscover these ancient millets.
Sure.
We published the first 3 in the series. You can find them at sorghosquad.com. And we've got the next 3 actually already written. They just haven't published them yet.
That's fantastic. Like we said, awareness is the key. And when you start with the generation that's finally going to benefit from this, I think this is a great, great initiative.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I'm glad you like them as well. We are working on a gaming app, so there's a little bit of a tease there. But we think that these are going to help change how consumers think about their food and their food systems, as well as the role that they can have in sustainability around the planet.
Well, cheers to you and cheers to Sorghum Squad.
Yeah, great. Cheers.
But one thing I want to know, Nate, is our viewers would definitely want to know where they can get their hands on the Sorghum Squad.
Right. So they can be found at sorghosquad.com.
Mhm.
We also sell on Amazon. And then to learn more about the work that Sorghum United does, it's sorghumunited.com. And of course, we're on all the socials, the Facebooks, the LinkedIns, the WhatsApps of the world. Instagram is a big one for us, actually. So follow us. I think we do some really cool things. And I think it's just people get interested in this as a grassroots movement. We find that people just love the message once they understand what it is these grains are.
Oh, that's so great, Nate. Are those books mine?
Yes, absolutely. Just for you.
Okay, great. So, you know where to get these then.
All
Great
right.
meeting you, Nate.
Pleasure to meet you. Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us. Yeah.